This old world keeps rolling along. What will your answer be? What will you say when Jesus beckons you home? His name was Jimmy. He wasn't very old, about 10 or 11 years since birth. But you wouldn't call life for Jimmy heaven on earth. He lived in a big town in the north part of the nation. His mom and dad had forsaken him, so he had to sell newspapers to stay off starvation. His mom and dad loved the nightlife. Jimmy was just too much bother. But I wonder if they'll still feel the same way when they stand before my Heavenly Father. One day, as Jimmy carried his papers along, he passed by an old gospel mission. He heard the preacher inside say, "Come to the altar. My Jesus will give you a new life and a better way." Jimmy's feet were cold, his eyes watering. Inside it might be safer. So Jimmy said, "I'll go in, and if I see Jesus, I'll give him a paper." So Jimmy walked in and he sat down. And when the last altar call was given, Jimmy walked down the aisle, laid his paper bag on the altar, and lifted his watery eyes toward heaven. And he said, "Jesus, this is Jimmy. Jesus, this is Jimmy." So from that day on, when Jimmy would pass by the old gospel mission, he'd walk down the aisle, lay his paper bag on the altar, and lift his little face toward heaven. And he'd say, "Jesus, this is Jimmy. Jesus, this is Jimmy." One day, Jimmy rushed to the little gospel mission. Inside, the preacher was having a council meeting. Jimmy didn't realize he was disturbing anyone with his unusual prayer. But the preacher came and took him by the arm and said, "Boy, can't you see that we're busy? Why do you keep interrupting us with that simple, unusual prayer? Jesus, this is Jimmy." Jimmy said, "Preacher, all my life I've never known how to pray, but now I just want the Lord to know my name." The preacher said, "That doesn't matter, boy. You'll have to stop it just the same." So one more time, Jimmy was pushed aside. He left with tears in his eyes, but he said, "I can make it." It was a cold day. Jimmy slipped on the curb. A big truck hit him on the run. The preacher inside caught a glimpse of the scene, and feeling bad about what he'd done, he rushed to the little boy and took him in his arms, and to the nearest hospital they fled. The doctor was standing by, and the preacher was there too, and they heard little Jimmy speak from his bed, "Jesus, this is Jimmy." The doctor felt his pulse, and then he turned to the preacher and said, "His short life here on earth will soon be through." The preacher said, with a panic in his voice, "Oh dear God, what can we do?" Then all of a sudden the room lit up with a strange and beautiful light, meaning that someone was about to speak, but that someone was not in sight. The preacher cried, "If Jimmy could only be well, dear God, how it would please us." It was then that a still small voice spoke in a kind and gentle way, "Jimmy, this is Jesus. Jimmy, this is Jesus. Suffer the little children, and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven." Day follows night, night follows day. This old world keeps rolling along. What will your answer be?